So welcome everybody to our session, one of the first sessions at the DrupalCon 2020. I'm really excited to give you some insights about the magazine approach for storytelling. I also want to tell you that we prepared a poll in which we invite you to participate, and we try to handle the questions at the end of the session. We will also stay a bit longer so that we can handle all the questions, so feel free to ask questions as well. First of all, I would like to introduce the speakers first.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ina Wittmer. I work as an application engineer at UNIC in Zurich for 2 years now. And in the last 2 years, I was part of different Drupal projects. And I will give you some insight about the taxonomy approach we choose for this project.
Thank you very much, Ina. My name is Roy Fockenberger. I've been working for UNIC now for approximately 12 years in different areas. And my part is to give some insights about the business part of the project and how the business case was being set up. So what will you learn today? As we said in our session statement, there are actually 3 things you should take with you today. One of it is the advantages of the magazine approach, that you know all of them. Then, of course, how taxonomies can make a difference in segmentation and filtering. That's something we will see in Ina's presentation. And of course, more about how taxonomies can help with SEO improvements as well. So maybe to give you some background about the case itself, the schweizerfleisch magazine claims to be the leader in the subject of Swiss meat. So it's important that it's really about the Swiss meat itself, and it's about preparing, handling, and taking care of all the things around it. So it's not pretty much about the recipes, it's really about the whole ecosystem, as we can see in the second claim. So about strengthening appreciation, trust, and sympathy, and of course about the local production. And it was actually being set up with the storytelling approach around it to introduce all these points here. So what were the project goals? One of the main goals was certainly to create a central hub with valuable content. Historically, the platform was grown with on and offline content. So they had offline magazines, for example, Knife and Fork. And the idea was really to create a central hub, including all these offline and online topics, but also create the feeling that you have once guiding through the sessions and through the platforms online. And the second point, of course, was creating a better content mediation to try to give the right groups the right access to their needs. And the third point, which was highly important and crucial for us, was that we needed to have a system being set up to constantly learn and to develop and improve the learnings based on analytics data. So I want to quickly give an introduction of the magazine approach based on one of the stories, the burger story. So what you can see here is the front end of the page itself. You have these different navigation types, and high up here you can see that you can drop in right into the stories, and all these stories contain of different elements which should guide the user from content to content and help to make this even better. So here the story is called The Perfect Burger. It was important to have a human being right in the middle of the story itself. So it's really valuable and trustfully if somebody can actually explain why this is important from a person that is also well known. In this case, it's a chef from a very well-known restaurant. And he gives some tips throughout the story here. For example, he tells about what kind of meat you should take, for example, and how you shall prepare it in order to really make this nice burger, but also how to mince it, for example. This can be important. And then there are so many more important knowledge topics, for example, also on how to freeze or how to cool down the meat, but also on how to make it done afterwards. And these are all tiny little links embedded in the story that help guiding through the session. Then of course you can go to the way of doing it. These are videos that show how to do it, so not just recipes with an explanation, really a video on how you can see this as well. And there are also recipes, of course, related. We can see the taxonomies here, which Ina will coming to later on. And one of the most important point here is that at the end of each story, you always will find a new referral link so that you don't drop out of the page, so that you can really go to the next story, go to the next recipe, and try to learn something out of it. With this, I would like to hand over to you, Ina.
Thank you, Roy. So first, I would like to give you a short overview what the focus of the project setup was. And one important requirement of the project was to provide the editor a nice editorial experience that allows him to easily edit content and to create new stories. We implemented this project with Drupal 8, and we are using Claro with the Gym backend theme. To give the editor a lot of flexibility to create new content with different layouts and paragraphs, we are using the paragraphs module with the entity reference layout module. As you saw before in the burger story, the key element in this project was to be able to enrich the story with elements that link the user to other content that could be interesting for him. For this reason, we are using a taxonomy approach to be able to build the relationship between the different contents. These taxonomies need to be set by the editor for each new content, like a new recipe or a new story. An element where you can see very well how these taxonomies can be used is the content navigation element. The content navigation element is a group of elements that are related to each other through one or more taxonomies. There are different layouts, how this element looks like, and also the number of elements can be different. We will now go into the backend and create a new content navigation element. And first you can add a title and then choose the layout. And afterwards you see all the different taxonomies that exist on the platform, like what type of content it is or what animal this content is about. And we now choose that we want to see recipes for beef. And when we save this element, you can see here the preview with 5 elements that are recipes for beef. We can now edit the element again and choose some more taxonomies. For example, we only want simple recipes, so we can choose here difficulty simple. And we can now see that there are different elements here, only simple recipes. Another example where this taxonomy approach is very useful is the recipe search. And the recipe search is not only a text search where you can search for a recipe name or ingredients. It also allows the user to use the taxonomies as facets to filter the search result. And like that, the user can narrow down the search result by using multiple filters like the preparation time or the difficulty level. These were just 2 examples how we use taxonomies. The taxonomy approach also has a big impact on the SEO performance. With Drupal, we have out of the box for each term a detail page that then will get indexed by the search engines. And on the term page, you can see all the content that is referenced to this specific term, here in this example for beef. And also you can see the amount of content that exists on the website. We also implemented detail pages for multiple terms, so you can combine two terms, like here for lamb and beef, and then you only get the contents that are referenced to both of these terms.
So thanks very much, Ina, for these explanations and to show us the prototype and to go through it. So what are the takeaways now? We hope that you saw how the magazine approach helps to combine the claim and the appearance, but also the reading and searching habits of the internet. Then, of course, the second point is that you saw how taxonomies can make a difference for segmentation and filtering, as we saw it on the navigation module, for example, as well. And last but not least, we also have some points about the structure that can be used in the backend and the points we saw from Ina with the SEO improvements, for example, the clean URLs that are being generated. So with this, we would like to hand over to the question and answer session now. Feel free to drop some questions. First question from Sarah, where do you define to which taxonomy belongs a certain recipe? That's maybe a question you can answer, Ina.
Yes, so this is a task for the editor. So he needs, if he creates a new recipe, he needs to define all these different taxonomies, like what animal the recipe is about, what the preparation time is. So this needs to be done all manually.
So check this question. Any more questions? I can also see from the polls that approximately 50% of the people never use the approach. So it will also be interesting to see whether they learned something or whether they have some follow-up questions concerning this. There is one from Antonella. Do you use a combination of tags in the URL? And if so, what module or functionality do you use? It's also some for you, Ina.
No, we don't use a specific module for this. Only this detail page where we use multiple terms. This was a custom implementation that we did. But like the term detail page with the URL, that's just Drupal default.
Thanks very much for the explanation and thank you for the question, Antonella. The next question comes from Tassos Kutlas. Storytelling is quite interesting approach. Can you please explain the thinking behind it a bit? Of course, we can tell you a bit more about this. The idea is actually to have a story in the center because usually human beings are more interested in stories. And what you can do is you can really pack up all the important points within this story. For example, coming back to the meat story, you can also let people know, for example, where this meat piece is coming from, how it has been grown, show some stories about, for example, how the animals grew up. That's actually the story that you really try to have a story surrounded by everything you want to show and let the people know by giving them access with certain teasers so that they can really stay on the story itself. So that's actually the idea behind this. I hope this answers your question, Tassos. Do we have any more questions? There's one more coming in. Did you have to convert content from an old site or offline content to fit the storytelling approach? That's a good question, and I would give the first round to you, Ina.
No, we didn't have to migrate any content, so it was created new by the editors. But I think some content is based on a magazine that our client has before, so they kind of transferred that into this digital form. Yeah, I don't know, Roy, if you have some more.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely correct what you're saying. It's they had, I mean, from all these like magazines, they had existing content, but of course they had to convert it first to make it fit. It was also one of the biggest part was also to create the taxonomies and map them, because we set up the taxonomies first and try to map them to all the stories. So that was certainly a point they had to do. Then of course fitting the whole story to make it accessible online. And usually the way you read a magazine offline is really different to the way you read it online. So they had to adapt the styles as well a little bit. So that was actually quite a bit of work for them as well, to make the offline content fit into the new platform, but also to amend a bit the existing, of course, platform, what they had. Also make topics more searchable, for example. Thanks very much for the question from you, Paul. Any more questions? So we'll wait another 30 seconds. There's one more coming in. Have they added more taxonomies since releasing the site? That's also a good question, which I will hand over to you, Ina.
Yeah, I think the taxonomies were the part that we had the most discussions during the project. And of course, there were like some new taxonomies that we now added and some old ones that we now removed. But yeah, I think it took a lot of turns to get to the final taxonomy definition.
I think from a business perspective, it was also interesting that some of the taxonomies are really independent for each other. For example, the recipes on how critical or how much how do you say know-how you need to have to make one, but then you also have related topics where the taxonomies somehow belong together, and it was that was really a hard part in the architecture approach to figure out what fits the best for a user perspective at the end of the day. I hope we could answer this question. Then I would flag this one as well and ask for new questions. Another one is coming in. Did the new taxonomies change the architecture?
Not really. We just had to extend the already existing elements like the content navigation element with the new taxonomies so that it can be used there as well.
Thank you, Ina. You're welcome, Kate. Maybe some more questions to the case or to the technical approach. Then I would say we close the session now and move on forward. Thank you very much for attending our session. It was a pleasure being here. We are going to stay in the background as well and answer all questions that are coming up. But of course, if you have any other questions, we will be around the next couple of days. So feel free to approach us. And yeah, we will be happy to answer the questions. And with this, thanks very much to you, Ina, as well. And thanks very much to the audience for being here. And see you soon.